Baby saw a German shepherd tied to a motorcycle for fun. What Baby did next left everyone in tears. What happened next will shock you to your core. The story you're about to listen to will change how you see the world through a child's eyes forever. Make sure to like, share, subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This tale needs to reach every corner of the globe. A small hand reached through the chaos, and in that single moment, everything changed. It was one of those perfect Saturday afternoons when the sun painted everything golden, and the neighborhood buzzed with that lazy weekend energy. 5-year-old Max bounced on his toes beside his mom, Emma, outside Miller's corner store. His tiny fingers clutched a crumpled dollar bill, his weekly allowance burning a hole in his pocket as he debated between gummy bears and chocolate. "Just 5 more minutes, sweetheart," Emma said, scrolling through her phone while chatting with Mrs. Chen from down the street. "Let me finish talking to Linda about the school fundraiser." Max nodded absently, his attention already drifting to the rumble of motorcycles echoing from the alley behind Tony's bar. The sound was different today, rougher, meaner. His curious brown eyes followed the noise like a magnet. That's when he saw her. A German shepherd, magnificent even in her terror, stood tied to the back of a gleaming black motorcycle. Her thick coat was the color of autumn leaves mixed with midnight, and her intelligent eyes darted frantically between the laughing men surrounding her. The rope around her neck was pulled tight, too tight, and every time someone revved the engine, she jerked backward in pure panic. "Look at her dance," one of the men shouted over the engine noise, his beer bottle catching the sunlight. "Come on, Bruno, give it more gas." The man named Bruno twisted the throttle harder. The motorcycle roared to life, and the dog stumbled, her paws scraping against the concrete as she tried to escape the deafening sound. Her mouth was open, panting heavily, and Max could see something that made his little heart crack wide open. She was crying. Not the way humans cried, but the way animals did when they had nowhere left to run. Her ears were pinned flat against her head, and her tail was tucked so far under her body it had disappeared. Every muscle in her powerful frame trembled with fear. "Mom?" Max tugged on Emma's sleeve, but she was deep in conversation about bake sale logistics. "Not now, honey." Max looked back at the scene. More men had gathered now, forming a loose circle around the motorcycle. Some had their phones out, recording the spectacle. The dog's panic was entertainment to them, a twisted game where terror was the punchline. "Make her howl, Bruno," someone called out. "Bet she'll wet herself if you really gun it." Their laughter cut through the air like broken glass. Max took a step closer, his small sneakers silent on the pavement. He could see details now that made his stomach twist. The dog's paws were bleeding slightly from scraping against the rough concrete. Her breathing was so rapid it looked like she might collapse. And around her neck, beneath the cruel rope, was a worn leather collar with a small metal tag that caught the light. The name Stella was barely visible, scratched and faded, but it was her eyes that destroyed him. When she looked directly at Max, there was intelligence there. Desperate, pleading intelligence. She wasn't just a dog in distress. She was someone who understood exactly what was happening to her and couldn't make it stop. Their eyes met across the chaos, and in that moment, Max felt something shift inside his chest. It was bigger than anger, deeper than sadness. It was recognition, one soul seeing another soul in pain. "Please," those dark eyes seemed to whisper, "please help me." The men were getting louder now, their game escalating. Bruno revved the engine in sharp bursts, and with each roar, Stella jerked against the rope like a marionette with tangled strings. Her dignity was being stripped away piece by piece, and Max could see her spirit breaking with each cruel laugh. "Mom?" Max tried again, louder this time. Emma glanced down, annoyed. "Max, I told you to wait. Can't you see I'm talking?" But Max wasn't waiting anymore. Something inside him, something fierce and protective that had never existed before, was taking over. He looked back at his mother, safe in her conversation about ordinary things, then at Stella, trapped in her nightmare. The choice was simple. Max walked toward the alley, his heart hammered against his ribs, but his feet moved with purpose. The men were so focused on their cruel entertainment that they didn't notice a small boy approaching from behind. Max could smell motor oil, cigarettes, and something else. Fear. It hung in the air like smoke. He got close enough to see the sweat matting Stella's fur, close enough to hear her rapid breathing over the engine noise. She noticed him immediately, her head turning slightly in his direction. For a moment, her panicked panting slowed. "Hey there, girl," Max whispered, his voice so soft only she could hear. "It's okay. I see you." Stella's ears twitched forward, the first sign of hope Max had seen in her eyes. Bruno was building up for another dramatic rev, his hand twisted on the throttle, when Max did something that would change everything. He didn't think about it. He didn't plan it. He simply reached out with his small fingers and began working at the knot that held Stella prisoner. The rope was thick and cruel, tied in a way that tightened with every movement Stella made. Max's fingers were small but determined, and he worked at the knot with the focused intensity that only children possess when something matters more than their own safety. "Come on," he breathed, his tongue poking out slightly in concentration. "Come on, come on." Stella went completely still. Somehow, she understood what was happening. Her trembling stopped, and she held herself as motionless as a statue, giving Max the steadiness he needed to work. The knot was stubborn, made worse by Stella's earlier struggling, but Max's small fingers found the right loop. He pulled, twisted, and suddenly felt it give way. The rope loosened just enough. "There," he whispered. In one fluid motion, Max slipped the rope over Stella's head, and she was free. For a heartbeat, dog and boy stared at each other. Then Stella did something that would haunt Max's dreams for years to come. She pressed her massive head against his small chest and exhaled a breath that sounded exactly like relief. "Run," Max whispered against her fur. But Stella didn't run. Instead, she looked up at Max with those intelligent eyes and made a choice that would unravel secrets no one saw coming. She gently took the edge of Max's t-shirt between her teeth, not biting, just holding, and began to pull him away from the motorcycles, away from the men, toward the shadows behind the dumpster. "What are you doing?" Max whispered, but he followed. Behind them, Bruno revved the engine one more time, expecting to see Stella jerk in terror. Instead, he saw empty space and a dangling rope. "What the hell?" Bruno's voice cut through the afternoon air. "Where'd she go?" The other men stopped laughing. They looked around, confused, as if a 100-pound German shepherd could simply vanish into thin air. "She was just here! Check the rope, you idiot! How does a dog just disappear?" But Max and Stella were already hidden in the narrow space between two dumpsters, pressed against the brick wall of the alley. Stella was breathing hard, but it was different now. Not the frantic panting of terror, but the deep breaths of someone who had been holding her breath for too long. Max reached out slowly and touched her head. Her fur was softer than he'd expected, and warm. She leaned into his touch, and Max felt something he'd never experienced before. The weight of being trusted completely by another living being. "It's okay now," he whispered. "You're safe." But as Max looked into Stella's eyes, he realized something that made his stomach flip. This wasn't over, not even close, because Stella was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite understand, like she had something to tell him, something urgent and important. She kept glancing toward her chest, then back at Max, then toward her chest again. It took him a moment to realize she was trying to show him something. "What is it, girl?" Max whispered. Stella carefully lowered herself to the ground and rolled slightly onto her side. There, hidden beneath her thick fur and pressed against her chest, was something that shouldn't have been there, something that made Max's breath catch in his throat. A small waterproof pouch was secured against her body with medical tape, hidden so well that no one would ever notice it unless they were looking for it. And inside that pouch, Max could see the edge of something metallic and electronic. Stella looked at Max with those intelligent eyes, and suddenly he understood. She hadn't just been a victim, she had been carrying something so important that she had endured torture rather than reveal it. The men's voices were getting closer, their search becoming more frantic. "She can't have gone far. Check behind those dumpsters." Max's heart raced as he realized they were about to be discovered. But as he looked at Stella, he saw something in her eyes that made him brave. A trust so complete it took his breath away. "We need to go," he whispered. Stella stood immediately, and together they crept deeper into the shadows, toward a gap in the fence that led to Max's neighborhood. Behind them, the men's voices grew louder, more desperate. But Max wasn't thinking about the men anymore. He was thinking about the pouch hidden against Stella's chest, and the way her eyes had looked when she showed it to him. Like she was asking him to guard not just her life, but something much bigger. Something that someone had been willing to torture her for. As they slipped through the gap in the fence, Max realized his small act of kindness had just pulled him into something much larger and more dangerous than he could possibly understand. But looking at Stella, who stayed close to his side as they made their way toward his backyard, he knew one thing for certain. Whatever was in that pouch, whatever Stella had been protecting, he would protect it too. Because that's what friends did for each other. And in the space of 10 minutes, Stella had become the most important friend Max had ever had. Max's backyard felt like a different world compared to the chaos they had just escaped. The old wooden playhouse his dad had built last summer sat in the far corner, partially hidden by overgrown bushes and his mom's forgotten garden project. It was perfect. A secret place where a boy and his new friend could figure out what to do next. "Come on, Stella," Max whispered, leading her across the grass. "Nobody will find us here." Stella followed closely, her eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. Even in safety, she moved like someone who had learned never to fully relax. Her ears swiveled at every sound, a bird chirping, a car door slamming in the distance, the hum of Mrs. Peterson's air conditioner next door. The playhouse was just tall enough for Max to stand upright, with 2 small windows and a door that hung slightly crooked. Inside, it smelled like wood and childhood dreams. His action figures were scattered across the floor, along with some comic books and a half-finished puzzle of a fire truck. Max pushed aside his toys to make room, and Stella carefully stepped inside. The space was cramped with both of them, but somehow it felt right, like they were explorers who had discovered a secret cave. "Are you hungry?" Max asked, remembering the sandwich his mom had packed for their trip to the store. It was still in his pocket, slightly squished but perfectly edible. He unwrapped the peanut butter and jelly, tearing it in half. "Here." He held out the larger piece to Stella, but something strange happened. Instead of taking the food, Stella backed away slightly, her head tilted. She looked at the sandwich, then at Max, then at the sandwich again. Her behavior was different now, not fearful, but cautious in a way that seemed almost human. "It's okay," Max said softly. "It's just peanut butter. My mom makes them all the time." But Stella still wouldn't take it. Instead, she did something that made Max's breath catch. She very gently nudged his hand away from her mouth and then, with deliberate care, used her nose to push aside the fur on her chest. The waterproof pouch was more visible now, about the size of Max's palm, secured with what looked like medical tape. Stella looked directly into Max's eyes and made a soft, whining sound. Not distressed, but urgent, like she was trying to tell him something important. "You want me to look at it?" Max whispered. Stella's tail gave a small wag, the first sign of happiness Max had seen from her. With careful fingers, Max began to work at the tape. It was strong, designed to stay secure even through rough treatment, but it peeled away slowly. Stella held perfectly still, trusting him completely. Inside the pouch was something that made Max's heart race. A small electronic device, not quite like anything he'd seen before, but similar to the USB drives his older sister Lily used for school projects. This one was different though. It was sealed in clear plastic, and there were numbers written on it in permanent marker. Case No. 47, Priority Alpha. "What is this?" Max breathed. Stella's eyes were intense, focused. She nudged the device with her nose, then looked at Max again. The message was clear. This was why she had endured the rope, the motorcycle, the terror. This small piece of technology was worth protecting at any cost. Max turned the device over in his small hands. It was heavier than he'd expected, and there was something else wrapped with it, a folded piece of paper, also sealed in plastic. The paper had official-looking letterhead, but the words were too big for Max to understand. "Evidence log," he read slowly, sounding out the syllables. "Undercover operation, German Shepherd unit." His reading skills weren't strong enough to make sense of most of it, but certain words jumped out at him. Dangerous. Illegal. Life-threatening. "You're not just a regular dog, are you?" Max whispered, looking at Stella with new eyes. Stella's response was to move closer to him, pressing her warm body against his side. In the cramped space of the playhouse, Max could feel her heartbeat, steady now, but still faster than normal. She was still scared, but it was a different kind of fear. Not the panic of immediate danger, but the deep worry of someone carrying a heavy responsibility. Max carefully rewrapped the device and tucked it into his pocket. "Don't worry," he said, though he wasn't sure what he was promising. "I'll keep it safe." That's when they heard the voices. They were distant at first, but getting closer. Male voices, angry and searching. She couldn't have gone far with that rope burn. "Check every yard on this street. If someone's hiding her, they're in for a world of trouble." Max felt Stella tense beside him. Her breathing quickened, and she moved toward the playhouse window, peering out through the gap in the curtains Max had made from an old bedsheet. The voices were closer now, and Max could hear footsteps on the sidewalk in front of his house. His heart hammered against his ribs as he realized these weren't just random searchers. These were the men from the alley, and they were looking specifically for Stella. "Maybe we should call the cops," one voice said. "Report a stolen dog." "Are you stupid?" another voice snapped. "The last thing we need is cops asking questions. We handle this ourselves." Max pressed himself against the wall of the playhouse, trying to make himself as small as possible. Stella was completely still beside him, but he could feel the tension radiating from her body like heat. Through the small window, Max could see shapes moving in the front yard. 2 men, maybe 3, walking slowly across the grass. One of them was pointing toward the backyard. "Kids' stuff back here," one of them said. "Playhouse, swing set, perfect place to hide a dog." Max's blood turned to ice. They were coming straight toward them. Stella moved with sudden purpose. She positioned herself between Max and the door, her body low and ready. For the first time since he'd met her, Max saw the professional in her, the trained protector that existed beneath the terrified victim. The footsteps were in the backyard now, crushing the grass under heavy boots. "Check the shed first," one voice said. "You check the shed. I'll look in that little house." Max bit his lip to keep from making any sound. The device in his pocket felt like it was burning a hole through his jeans. Whatever was on it, whatever Stella had been protecting, it was important enough that these men were willing to search private property to get it back. The footsteps stopped right outside the playhouse door. "Hello?" a voice called out, artificially friendly. "Anyone in there? We're looking for a lost dog. German Shepherd, real pretty. Answers to the name Stella." Max and Stella didn't move, didn't breathe. "She might be hurt," the voice continued. "We just want to help her." The door handle rattled. Max's heart stopped. The door wasn't locked. There was no way to lock it. If the man tried to open it, they would be discovered instantly. But Stella had a different plan. With careful precision, she moved to the door and braced her body against it. Not aggressively, but firmly. Her paws were positioned perfectly to keep the door from opening, and her weight was distributed in a way that would make it seem like the door was simply stuck. The handle turned. The door pushed inward an inch, then stopped. "Thing's stuck," the man muttered. "Cheap construction." He pushed harder. The door creaked but didn't budge. Stella's muscles were taut with effort, but she held her position silently. "Forget it," another voice called from across the yard. "She's not back here. Let's try the next house." "You sure? This door's really stuck." "It's a kid's playhouse, Bruno. What do you think? The dog learned to operate a door handle?" The pressure on the door stopped. Footsteps moved away, back toward the front of the house. Max and Stella waited in absolute silence for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Finally, the voices faded completely, and the sound of car engines starting drifted from the street. Only then did Stella relax, moving away from the door and settling beside Max again. "That was close," Max whispered, his voice shaking slightly. Stella nuzzled his hand, and Max realized something that made his chest tight with emotion. She had protected him, not just herself, but him. She had positioned herself between Max and danger without hesitation. "They called you Stella," Max said softly. "That really is your name." Stella's tail wagged once, confirming it. Max pulled the device out of his pocket again, studying it in the afternoon light filtering through the playhouse window. The official-looking paper was still folded with it, and now Max was more determined than ever to understand what it said. "We need help," he said, looking at Stella. "Someone who can read this stuff and tell us what it means." Stella tilted her head, listening. "My sister Lily," Max continued, thinking out loud. "She's really smart. She knows about computers and stuff, and she won't tell Mom and Dad if I ask her not to." "I need to go get Lily," Max told Stella, "but I can't leave you here alone. What if those men come back?" Stella seemed to understand the problem. She stood up and moved to the corner of the playhouse where Max kept his sleeping bag for camping adventures. Using her teeth, she carefully pulled the sleeping bag over herself, creating a hiding spot that would be nearly invisible to anyone who didn't know to look for it. "Smart girl," Max breathed. "I'll be back as fast as I can." He started to leave, then turned back. "Stella, why did you trust me? Back there in the alley, you could have run anywhere. Why did you show me the pouch?" Stella looked at him with those intelligent eyes, and Max got the strangest feeling that she was trying to smile. She moved close to him one more time, pressing her nose against his hand in a gesture that felt like a promise. Max understood. Sometimes trust wasn't about logic or safety. Sometimes it was about recognizing something in another person, or another being, that felt like home. "I'll be right back," Max promised, and slipped out of the playhouse. The walk back to Miller's corner store felt like walking through a different world. Everything looked the same. The same sidewalks, the same houses, the same afternoon sun. But Max felt fundamentally changed. 20 minutes ago, he had been a regular 5-year-old worried about candy choices. Now he was the guardian of secrets he didn't understand, protector of a friend who had endured torture rather than give up her mission. Emma was exactly where he'd left her, still talking to Mrs. Chen, though now she looked slightly worried. "Max, there you are. I was starting to wonder where you'd gone." "Sorry, Mom. I saw a cool bug and followed it." It was the first lie Max had ever told his mother, and it tasted bitter in his mouth. But the weight of the device in his pocket reminded him that some things were more important than always telling the truth. "Did you decide what candy you want?" Emma asked, ruffling his hair. "Actually," Max said, thinking quickly, "can we go home? I want to show Lily something." "Show Lily what?" Max's mind raced. A bug? The bug I found. I put it in a jar." Emma smiled. "Of course, sweetheart. Let me just finish up here." As they walked home, Max's mind was spinning with plans. He needed to get Lily alone, away from their parents. He needed to explain about Stella without sounding crazy. And he needed to figure out what was on that device before the men came back. Because Max was absolutely certain they would come back. The desperation in their voices told him that whatever Stella was protecting, it was worth more to them than one dog's life. And now it was worth more to Max than his own safety. The house felt different when they walked in. Normal sounds, the TV in the living room, Dad's music from his office, the dishwasher running in the kitchen, seemed impossibly ordinary compared to the secret burning in Max's pocket. "Lily," Max called out as soon as they were inside. "She's in her room," Emma said. "Doing homework, I think." Max raced upstairs, his heart pounding with urgency. Every second Stella was alone in the backyard was a second those men might find her. He burst through Lily's door without knocking. "Max!" Lily protested, looking up from her laptop. "Ever heard of knocking?" "I need your help," Max said, closing the door behind him. "It's really important." Something in his tone made Lily pause. She was 13, old enough to recognize when her little brother was genuinely upset versus just being dramatic. "What's wrong?" she asked, setting aside her homework. Max pulled the device from his pocket, still wrapped in its plastic protection. "I need you to tell me what this is." Lily's eyes widened as she took in the official-looking markings, the evidence numbers, the careful packaging. "Max, where did you get this?" "Promise you won't tell Mom and Dad," Max said urgently. "Promise me, Lily. This is really, really important." Lily looked at her little brother, really looked at him, and saw something she'd never seen before. Max looked older somehow, like he'd experienced something that had changed him fundamentally. "I promise," she said softly. "Now, tell me everything." Max took a deep breath and told his sister about the motorcycle, the rope, the men's cruel laughter, and Stella's terrified eyes. He told her about the rescue, the hidden pouch, and the device that seemed more important than life itself. Lily listened without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. "This is big, Max," Lily said finally, turning the device over in her hands. "Like, really big. This isn't just some random thing. Can you make it work? Can you see what's on it?" Lily nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can try, but, Max, if this is what I think it is..." She trailed off, studying the official markings again. "We might be in over our heads." "What do you mean?" "I mean, this looks like police evidence, or FBI, or something even bigger." Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. "And if those men were willing to torture a dog to get it back, they're not going to stop looking." Max felt a chill run down his spine, but his resolve didn't waver. "Stella trusted me with it. I can't let her down." Lily looked at her little brother with new respect. "Okay, but we do this carefully, and if things get scary, we call the police immediately. Deal?" "Deal." Lily inserted the device into her laptop. The screen flickered for a moment, then prompted for a password. "It's encrypted," Lily murmured, "but sometimes these older drives have default passwords or..." She typed rapidly, trying various combinations. "Got it." The screen filled with files, dozens of them, organized by date and location. Video files, audio recordings, GPS coordinates. and what looked like financial records. "Oh my God," Lily breathed, clicking on the first video file. The footage was shaky, clearly taken with a hidden camera. It showed the interior of what looked like an abandoned warehouse. Men were gathered around a makeshift ring, shouting and waving money. And in the center of the ring, Max turned away as the sounds of barking and growling filled the room. He didn't need to see it to understand what was happening. "Dog fighting," Lily said, her voice tight with disgust. "This is evidence of an illegal dog fighting ring." She clicked through more files, bank transfers, betting records, names and phone numbers, but it was the audio files that made everything clear. "Next shipment comes in Thursday. Make sure the new dogs are ready for breaking." "What about the cop dog? She causing problems?" "Yeah, she won't fight, too well trained, but she's perfect for bait. Let the young ones practice on her before the real matches." Max's stomach twisted as he realized what they had been planning for Stella. She wasn't just a victim, she was an undercover police dog who had been captured during an investigation. "Stella's a police dog," he whispered. "More than that," Lily said, scrolling through more files. "Look at this." The screen showed a police report with Stella's photo. Her official designation was K9 Unit Stella, Undercover Operations Division. She had been working with Detective Maria Santos to infiltrate the dogfighting ring when she'd gone missing 3 weeks ago. The police had assumed she was dead. "She's been missing for 3 weeks," Lily said. "Max, she's a hero. She was trying to gather evidence to shut down this whole operation." More pieces clicked into place as they read through the files. The dogfighting ring wasn't just about illegal gambling. It was connected to drug trafficking, money laundering, and human trafficking. Stella had been gathering evidence that could bring down an entire criminal network. "This is why they were so desperate to get her back," Max said. "She has evidence that could send them all to prison." "For a very long time," Lily agreed. "But Max, this also means we're in serious danger. These aren't just mean guys who hurt animals. These are real criminals." As if summoned by her words, they heard the sound of car doors slamming in their driveway. Both children froze. Through Lily's bedroom window, they could see a black SUV parked behind their mom's car. 2 men in dark clothes were walking toward their front door. "Oh no," Max breathed. "They found us." The doorbell rang downstairs, followed by their father's voice calling out a greeting. Lily quickly ejected the device and handed it back to Max. "Hide this, somewhere they'll never think to look." Max's mind raced. Where could he hide something so small but so important? His room would be searched. So would Lily's. The playhouse was too obvious now. The sound of voices drifted up from downstairs, their father talking to someone with a deep, authoritative voice. "We're looking for a missing dog," the stranger was saying. "German Shepherd. We heard some kids in the neighborhood might have seen her." "I haven't seen any stray dogs," their father replied, "but you're welcome to check with my kids." Max's heart stopped. They were going to be called downstairs for questioning. "The fish tank," Lily whispered urgently. "Wrap it in plastic and tape it under the tank stand. They'll never look there." Max nodded and raced to his room. His goldfish, Bubbles, swam lazily in his small tank, while Max taped the device to the underside of the wooden stand. The plastic wrapping would keep it safe from moisture, and the location was so mundane that no one would think to check it. "Max, Lily," their father called from downstairs. "Can you come down here for a minute?" The children exchanged one last look of understanding. They had to act normal. They had to protect Stella and the evidence she'd risked everything to gather. They walked downstairs together, and Max's blood ran cold when he saw the men waiting in their living room. One of them was Bruno, the man from the motorcycle. The other was older, with cold eyes and an expensive suit that didn't quite hide the gun holster under his jacket. "Kids," their father said with a smile, "these gentlemen are looking for a lost dog. Have either of you seen a German Shepherd around the neighborhood?" Max forced himself to look directly at Bruno, even though every instinct told him to run. "What does she look like?" "Big dog," Bruno said, his eyes studying Max's face carefully. "Brown and black fur. Real friendly. Her name's Stella." "I haven't seen any dogs like that," Max said, proud that his voice didn't shake. "What about you, sweetheart?" the older man asked Lily, his tone deceptively gentle. "No, sir. I've been inside doing homework all day." The older man nodded slowly, but his eyes remained suspicious. "The thing is, we tracked her to this neighborhood. She's been missing from our training facility, and we're really worried about her." "Training facility?" their mother asked, entering the room with a tray of coffee for the guests. We run a specialized training program for working dogs, the man explained smoothly. Stella is one of our most valuable animals. She represents years of training and thousands of dollars of investment. Max bit his tongue to keep from saying what he was thinking. Stella wasn't an investment. She was a living being who deserved kindness and respect. If she shows up, how can we contact you? Their father asked. The older man handed over a business card. That's my direct number. There's a substantial reward for her safe return. Max watched Bruno during this exchange. The man's eyes never stopped moving, taking in every detail of their house. When his gaze passed over Max, there was something there, a flicker of recognition that made Max's stomach clench. Well, the older man said, standing up, we should check with the other neighbors. Thank you for your time. Of course, their father replied. I hope you find her soon. Max and Lily stayed frozen in place until they heard the SUV drive away. Only then did they dare to breathe normally. Nice people, their mother commented. I hope they find their dog. Max and Lily exchanged a look, but said nothing. Their parents had no idea what had just happened, and it was better that way. The less their family knew, the safer they would be. That evening, after dinner and homework and all the normal routines of family life, Max slipped out to the backyard. Stella was exactly where he'd left her, hidden under the sleeping bag in the playhouse. But when she saw him, her entire body language changed. She was trembling, not with fear, but with excitement and relief. She pressed against him immediately, whining softly, as if she'd been afraid he wouldn't come back. I'm here, Max whispered, stroking her fur. I'm here, and I know who you are now. Stella tilted her head, listening. You're police, Max said softly. You're one of the good guys, and those men who hurt you, they're the bad guys you were trying to catch. Stella's tail wagged once, confirming his words. Lily helped me look at what's on the device, Max continued. There's enough evidence to put them all in jail, but we have to be really careful about who we tell. As if she understood completely, Stella moved to the playhouse window and peered out, scanning the yard for threats. Even in safety, she maintained her vigilance. Max pulled out his phone, a simple device his parents had given him for emergencies. I want to call the police and tell them you're alive, but those men said they were from a training facility. What if some of the police believe them? Stella looked at Max with those intelligent eyes, and he got the strangest feeling that she was trying to communicate something specific. She moved to the corner of the playhouse and began scratching at the wooden floor with her paw. What are you doing? Max asked. Stella continued scratching, and Max realized she was trying to write something. In the dust and dirt, she had managed to scratch out what looked like numbers. 477. 477? Max repeated. Stella wagged her tail and moved to scratch something else. This time, the marks looked like letters. S-A-N. San? 477 San? Max puzzled over it for a moment, then gasped. Detective Santos! 477 is probably her badge number or something. Stella's excitement confirmed his guess. She wanted him to contact Detective Santos specifically, not just any police officer, but her partner in the undercover operation. Okay, Max said, feeling a surge of hope. Tomorrow I'll figure out how to reach Detective Santos, but tonight, you're safe here with me. Stella settled down beside him, finally allowing herself to truly relax for the first time since her ordeal began. As Max sat with her in the quiet darkness of the playhouse, he thought about how much his life had changed in just one day. This morning, he'd been a regular kid worried about candy choices. Now he was protecting a police dog who had risked everything to gather evidence against dangerous criminals. The responsibility felt enormous, but looking at Stella's peaceful expression as she finally allowed herself to rest, Max knew he'd made the right choice. But as he prepared to sneak back into the house, Max noticed something that made his blood run cold. Across the street, partially hidden behind a neighbor's car, was the black SUV from earlier. Someone was sitting in the driver's seat, watching their house. They hadn't given up. They were waiting, watching, planning their next move. Max gently touched Stella's head. We're not safe yet, he whispered, but I promise, I won't let them hurt you again. Stella opened her eyes and looked at him with complete trust. In that moment, Max realized that protecting her wasn't just about doing the right thing anymore. It was about love, the kind of fierce, protective love that made ordinary people capable of extraordinary courage. The battle for Stella's life, and the evidence she carried, was just beginning. But Max was no longer a scared little boy. He was a guardian, a protector, a friend who would fight for what was right, no matter what the cost. And tomorrow, he would make sure Detective Santos knew that her partner was alive, and that the evidence she'd died to protect was safe. The real fight was about to begin. Max barely slept that night. Every sound, the house settling, wind in the trees, a car passing on the street, made him bolt upright in bed, heart racing. Through his bedroom window, he could still see the black SUV parked across the street, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. At 6 a.m., when the first rays of sunlight crept through his curtains, Max made his decision. He couldn't wait any longer. Detective Santos needed to know that her partner was alive, and more importantly, that the evidence Stella had risked everything to gather was safe. Max crept downstairs, careful to avoid the creaky third step that always woke his parents. In the kitchen, he found his mom's laptop on the counter where she paid bills and managed the family calendar. His fingers trembled as he opened it and navigated to the city police department's website. Finding Detective Santos wasn't as hard as he'd expected. The website had a directory of officers, and there she was. Detective Maria Santos, badge No. 477, Undercover Operations Division. Her official photo showed a woman with kind eyes and determined expression. Exactly the kind of person Stella would trust with her life. Max memorized the phone number and closed the laptop. But as he turned to head back upstairs, he froze. Through the kitchen window, he could see movement in the backyard. A figure was creeping toward the playhouse, moving with the careful stealth of someone who didn't want to be seen. Panic shot through Max like electricity. They had found Stella. Without thinking, Max grabbed the baseball bat his dad kept by the back door and slipped outside. The morning air was cool against his pajamas, and the grass was wet with dew that soaked through his bare feet. He moved as quietly as possible toward the playhouse, his heart hammering so loud he was sure it would give him away. The figure was crouched beside the playhouse now, trying to peer through the small window. Max could see it was Bruno, the man from the motorcycle, and he had something in his hand that glinted in the early morning light. A knife. Max's breath caught in his throat. Bruno wasn't just looking for Stella, he was planning to hurt her, maybe even kill her to keep her quiet permanently. But as Max got closer, he realized something was wrong. The playhouse was too quiet. There was no sound of movement, no sign of Stella at all. Bruno must have realized it too, because he was now trying to force open the playhouse door. When it swung open easily, revealing nothing but Max's scattered toys, Bruno let out a string of curse words that made Max's ears burn. "Where is she?" Bruno muttered, searching frantically through the small space. "She was here. I know she was here." That's when Max understood. Stella was gone. Relief and terror battled in his chest. Relief that Stella had somehow escaped before Bruno found her, terror about where she might have gone and whether she was safe. Bruno emerged from the playhouse, his face twisted with frustration. He began searching the rest of the backyard, looking behind bushes, under the deck, anywhere a large dog might hide. Max pressed himself against the side of the house, trying to stay invisible. But Bruno's search was getting closer to Max's hiding spot. In another few seconds, he would be discovered, and Max had no idea what a desperate criminal might do to a child who had interfered with his plans. That's when salvation came from an unexpected direction. "Hey, what are you doing in my backyard?" Bruno straightened up, trying to look innocent. "Sorry, sir. I'm looking for my lost dog. I thought I saw her run back here." At 6 in the morning, without permission, Max's dad stepped off the porch, moving with the confident stride of someone who wasn't intimidated. "I think you better leave, now. Look, I just want my dog back. And I just want you off my property before I call the police." Bruno's hand moved toward something in his jacket, probably the knife Max had seen earlier. For a terrifying moment, Max thought the man might actually attack his father. But then another voice joined the conversation. "Is there a problem here?" Max nearly cried with relief. Mrs. Patterson from next door had come outside to investigate the commotion, and behind her was Mr. Chen from across the street. Other neighbors were starting to appear on porches and in windows, drawn by the raised voices. Bruno looked around at the growing audience and made a quick calculation. Whatever he'd been planning to do, it couldn't happen with half the neighborhood watching. "No problem," he said, backing toward the fence. "Just looking for my dog. If you see her, call the number on the flyer." "What flyer?" Max's dad asked, but Bruno was already climbing over the fence into the alley behind their house. Max waited until he heard a car engine start and drive away before emerging from his hiding spot. His father saw him immediately. "Max, what are you doing out here in your pajamas?" "I heard noises," Max said, which was technically true. "I wanted to make sure everything was okay." His father's expression softened. "Come on, son. Let's get you inside before you catch cold." As they walked back to the house, Max's mind was racing. Stella was gone, but where? And more importantly, was she safe? The answer came an hour later, while Max was eating breakfast and trying to act normal despite his racing thoughts. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your friend is safe. Meet me at Riverside Park in 1 hour. Come alone. Detective Santos." Max's heart leaped. Somehow, Detective Santos had found Stella, or maybe Stella had found her. Either way, they were together and they were safe. But the message said to come alone, and Max knew his parents would never let him go to the park by himself, especially after the morning's incident with Bruno. "Mom," Max said carefully, "can I go ride my bike to the park? I want to practice on the big hill." Emma looked up from her coffee. "After what happened this morning? Absolutely not. There are strange men wandering around the neighborhood." Max's heart sank. He had to get to the park, but he couldn't tell his parents why without explaining everything. That's when Lily came to his rescue. "I'll go with him," she offered. "I need to get out of the house anyway, and I can watch him at the park." Emma considered this. Lily was responsible, and the park was safe during the day with plenty of people around. "Okay," she said finally, "but stay together and be back by lunch." An hour later, Max and Lily were walking through Riverside Park, looking for any sign of Detective Santos. The park was busy with morning joggers, dog walkers, and families with young children. It would be the perfect place for a covert meeting, public enough to be safe, but with enough activity to provide cover. "There," Lily whispered, pointing toward a bench near the pond. A woman in casual clothes was sitting alone, feeding ducks from a bag of breadcrumbs. She looked just like her photo on the police website, but without the uniform, she could have been any ordinary mom enjoying a peaceful morning. And lying at her feet, looking calm and alert, was Stella. Max's heart soared at the sight of his friend safe and sound. Stella saw him at the same moment, and her tail began wagging, but she stayed in position beside Detective Santos like the trained professional she was. "Detective Santos," Max said as they approached the bench. The woman looked up and smiled. "You must be Max, and this is your sister Lily." "How did you know?" Lily asked. "Stella told me," Detective Santos said with a slight smile. "In her own way, she led me straight to your house this morning, then showed me exactly which bedroom window was yours. I put 2 and 2 together." Max sat down on the bench, and Stella immediately moved to press against his legs, her familiar warmth and weight a comfort after the terrifying morning. "I was so scared when she was gone," Max said, scratching behind Stella's ears. "She was never in real danger," Detective Santos assured him. "Stella has been trained to evade capture and find safe extraction points. When she sensed the threat getting too close, she followed her training and came to find me." "How did she know where to find you?" Lily asked. Detective Santos pulled out her phone and showed them a small app. "Every K9 officer has a GPS tracker. It's for their safety and ours. When Stella went missing 3 weeks ago, we thought her tracker had been destroyed, but it was just being blocked somehow. Last night, it started working again." That was when Max brought her home, Lily realized. She must have been in some kind of building that blocked the signal. Exactly. Detective Santos's expression grew serious. "Max, what you did was incredibly brave, but it was also incredibly dangerous. These men aren't just animal abusers. They're part of a major criminal organization. They've killed people to protect their operation." Max felt a chill run down his spine, but his resolve didn't waver. "I couldn't just leave her there. She was scared and hurt, and they were being mean to her." "I know," Detective Santos said gently. "And Stella knows too. You saved her life, Max. Without your intervention, we never would have gotten her back, and months of undercover work would have been lost." "The device," Max said suddenly. "I hid the device with all the evidence." "We'll need to retrieve that," Detective Santos said. "But first I need to know everything that's happened since you found her. Every detail could be important." Max and Lily told her everything. The rescue, the search of their house, the men claiming to be from a training facility, and Bruno's early morning break-in attempt. Detective Santos listened without interruption, her expression growing more concerned with each detail. "They're getting desperate," she said finally. "The evidence Stella gathered is enough to bring down their entire operation, and they know it. They can't afford to let her live." What happens now? Max asked. Now we finish what Stella started, but I need that evidence, and I need to know that you and your family are safe. Detective Santos pulled out her radio and spoke in code that Max couldn't understand. Within minutes, 2 unmarked police cars pulled into the park's parking lot. Those are my backup officers, she explained. They're going to escort us back to your house to retrieve the evidence, and then we're going to make sure those men never hurt another animal again. As they walked toward the cars, Stella stayed close to Max's side, but something was different about her now. The terrified, traumatized dog he'd rescued was gone, replaced by the confident, professional police officer she'd always been underneath. Will I see her again? Max asked as they reached the cars. After this is all over? Detective Santos smiled. Stella's going to need some time to recover from her ordeal, but I think she'd like that very much. You've made quite an impression on her. Stella looked up at Max with those intelligent eyes and made a soft sound that could only be described as agreement. But as they prepared to get into the police cars, Max noticed something that made his stomach drop. Across the street from the park, partially hidden behind a delivery truck, was the same black SUV that had been watching their house. They were still being followed. Detective Santos, Max said urgently, pointing toward the SUV. She followed his gaze and her expression immediately hardened. She spoke rapidly into her radio, and suddenly the peaceful park scene transformed into something from an action movie. The unmarked police cars moved to block the park exits while Detective Santos ushered Max, Lily, and Stella toward a secure position behind a maintenance building. Stay down, she instructed, drawing her weapon. This might get complicated. Max could hear car engines revving and tires squealing as the black SUV tried to escape, only to find itself surrounded by police vehicles. Through the gap between buildings, he could see Bruno and the older man being forced out of their vehicle at gunpoint. It's over, Detective Santos said with satisfaction. We got them. But as Max watched the arrest unfold, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Stella had gathered evidence against an entire criminal network, not just 2 men. How many others were still out there, still angry, still dangerous? The question that haunted Max was simple. Would any of them ever truly be safe again? Have you ever had to choose between your safety and doing what's right? What would you have done in Max's place? The arrest at the park was just the beginning. Over the next 3 weeks, Max's life became a whirlwind of police interviews, court preparations, and media attention that he never could have imagined. The evidence Stella had gathered led to the biggest bust in the city's history. 27 arrests, 3 major criminal organizations dismantled, and dozens of rescued animals finally getting the care they deserved. But through it all, Max had one question that burned in his heart. Could he keep Stella? The question haunted him as he sat in Detective Santos's office on a sunny Thursday afternoon, 3 weeks after that dramatic morning at the park. Stella lay at his feet, looking healthier and happier than he had ever seen her, but Max knew this might be their last meeting. The department wants to offer Stella early retirement, Detective Santos said, setting down a stack of official-looking papers. After what she's been through, they think she deserves a peaceful life away from undercover work. Max's heart leaped, but he tried not to get his hopes up. What does that mean? It means she gets to choose her own family, Detective Santos smiled. And frankly, she's made her choice pretty clear. Stella looked up at Max with those intelligent eyes and placed her head on his lap, the same gesture of trust she'd given him that first day in the alley. Really? Max whispered, afraid to believe it. Detective Santos nodded. Your parents and I have been talking. They're willing to give Stella a home if you promise to take full responsibility for her care. Max felt tears spring to his eyes. I promise. I promise I'll take the best care of her ever. There's just one condition, Detective Santos continued. Stella is a trained police dog with specialized skills. The department would like her to do some community outreach work, visiting schools, talking to kids about animal safety and kindness. Would you be willing to help with that? Max's face lit up. You mean we get to visit schools together and tell other kids about being kind to animals? Exactly. Stella has a story that needs to be shared, and you're the perfect person to help her tell it. The first school visit happened 2 weeks later. Max stood nervously in front of Mrs. Rodriguez's 3rd grade class, Stella sitting calmly beside him in her official police vest. The children's eyes were wide with excitement and curiosity. This is Stella, Max began, his voice growing stronger as he spoke. She's a police dog, but she's also my best friend. And I want to tell you about the day we met." He told them about seeing Stella tied to the motorcycle, about the fear in her eyes, about the choice he had to make between walking away and helping someone who couldn't help herself. "I was scared," Max admitted, "but sometimes doing the right thing means being brave even when you're scared." One little girl raised her hand. "What happened to the bad men?" "They went to jail," Max said simply, "because what they were doing was wrong. Animals deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, just like people do." Another boy asked, "Is Stella really a police dog?" Detective Santos, who had been watching from the back of the classroom, stepped forward. "She sure is. Stella helped solve one of the biggest cases in our city's history. She's a hero." But Max shook his head. "She's not just a hero because she's a police dog. She's a hero because she never gave up hope, even when things were really scary. And that's something all of us can do. Never give up hope and always try to help others when we can." After the presentation, the children gathered around Stella, gently petting her soft fur and marveling at her calm, gentle nature. She seemed to understand that these were children who needed to see that not all big dogs were scary, that some were protectors and friends. "Mr. Max," one little girl said, tugging on his sleeve, "I want to help animals too when I grow up." "You don't have to wait until you grow up," Max told her. "You can help animals right now by being kind to them, by telling adults if you see an animal being hurt, and by never giving up when you see something that's wrong." As they walked back to Detective Santos's car after the school visit, Max felt a deep sense of purpose he'd never experienced before. This wasn't just about him and Stella anymore. It was about spreading a message of kindness and courage to other kids who might face their own moments of choice. "How did it feel?" Detective Santos asked as they drove home. "Good," Max said, then paused to think more carefully. "Really good. Like we're helping kids understand that they can make a difference too." "That's exactly what we're doing," she agreed. "Stella's story is powerful because it shows that heroes come in all sizes, including 5-year-old boys who are brave enough to do what's right." Over the following months, Max and Stella visited schools throughout the city. Each presentation was different, tailored to the age and needs of the students, but the core message remained the same. Kindness matters, courage comes in many forms, and every person, no matter how small, has the power to make a difference. Max's confidence grew with each presentation. He learned to answer difficult questions about animal abuse, about standing up to bullies, about the importance of telling trusted adults when something was wrong. Stella was always by his side, a living example of resilience and trust. But it was at Jefferson Elementary School that something extraordinary happened. Max was halfway through his presentation when a small boy in the back row raised his hand. "Mr. Max, what if the bad guys come back? What if they want to hurt Stella again?" The question hung in the air, and Max could see the worry in several children's faces. It was a fear he had struggled with himself in the weeks after Stella's rescue. "That's a really good question," Max said thoughtfully. "And you know what? I was worried about that too. But here's what I learned." He knelt down beside Stella, who immediately leaned against him in their familiar gesture of mutual support. "The bad guys are in jail now, and they can't hurt Stella or any other animals. But even if I was still worried, I wouldn't let fear stop me from doing what's right, because love is stronger than fear." Max looked around the classroom, making eye contact with as many children as possible. "When I first saw Stella, I was scared, but I loved her more than I was scared, and that love gave me the courage to help her. Now she's not just safe, she's helping other kids learn about courage too." A little girl near the front raised her hand. "So, love makes you brave?" Max smiled. "Love makes you brave, and being brave helps you protect the people and animals you love. It's like a circle that keeps getting bigger and stronger." After that presentation, Max realized something had changed in how he thought about his experience with Stella. It wasn't just a story about rescuing a dog anymore. It was a story about how love and courage could change the world, one small act of kindness at a time. 6 months after their first school visit, Max and Stella received an unexpected invitation. The mayor wanted to present them with the city's Citizen Hero Award at a special ceremony. "Do I have to make a speech?" Max asked nervously as his family prepared for the ceremony. "Just speak from your heart," his mother said, adjusting his tie. "Tell them what Stella means to you." The ceremony was held in the City Hall auditorium, filled with police officers, city officials, and families from all the schools Max and Stella had visited. As Max walked onto the stage with Stella by his side, he saw Detective Santos in the front row, beaming with pride. "Max Henderson," the mayor announced. "6 months ago, you were just a 5-year-old boy at the corner store with his mother. But when you saw an animal in distress, you didn't walk away. You didn't wait for someone else to help. You acted with courage and compassion that inspired an entire city." The audience applauded, but Max barely heard it. He was looking at Stella, remembering that first moment when their eyes met across the chaos of the alley. "And Stella," the mayor continued, "you represent the best of what it means to serve and protect. Your courage in gathering evidence to stop a criminal organization and your ongoing work to educate children about kindness and bravery makes you a true hero." When it was Max's turn to speak, he stepped up to the microphone with Stella beside him. The auditorium fell silent. "When I first met Stella," Max began, his voice clear and strong, "she was scared and hurt. But she wasn't broken. She still had hope, and she still had love to give." He paused, looking out at the audience of adults and children who had come to honor them. "Stella taught me that being a hero isn't about being big or strong or fearless. It's about caring more about helping others than about your own safety. It's about never giving up on love, even when the world seems scary." Max knelt down and put his arm around Stella, who leaned into him with complete trust. "Every day, Stella and I meet kids who want to make a difference, and we tell them the same thing we're telling you today. You don't have to wait to be a hero. You can be one right now, in your school, in your neighborhood, in your family. Every act of kindness matters. Every moment of courage counts." The standing ovation lasted for several minutes, but Max was focused on Stella, whose tail was wagging as she looked up at him with pure adoration. Later that evening, as the family celebrated at home with pizza and ice cream, Max sat in the backyard with Stella under the stars. The old playhouse was still there, but it had been transformed into something new, a small library of children's books about animal kindness and courage, donated by families from all over the city. "Did you ever think it would turn out like this?" Max asked Stella, who was lying contentedly beside him on the grass. Stella made a soft sound that Max had learned to interpret as contentment mixed with affection. "I know I never thought rescuing you would lead to all this," Max continued, "but I'm glad it did. We're helping so many kids understand that they can make a difference." As if in response to his words, Stella shifted closer to him, and Max noticed something that made his heart swell with joy. In the corner of the yard, near the old playhouse, was a small wooden box with a soft blanket inside, and in that box were 3 tiny puppies, no more than a few weeks old. "Stella," Max breathed, "are these?" Stella looked at him with what could only be described as maternal pride. These were her puppies, born in the safety and love of the home Max had given her. "This is the best surprise ever," Max whispered, watching the tiny puppies sleep peacefully under their mother's watchful eye. As he sat there under the stars, Max realized that Stella's story had come full circle. From victim to survivor to hero to mother, she had transformed not just her own life, but the lives of countless children who had heard her story and found their own courage to act with kindness. The 3 puppies would grow up knowing only love and safety, and someday they might follow in their mother's footsteps, serving and protecting others in their own unique ways. Max looked at Stella, who was watching her babies with infinite tenderness, and knew that their story was far from over. It was just beginning a new chapter, one filled with hope, love, and the endless possibility that comes when ordinary people choose to do extraordinary things. "She wasn't just a rescue dog," Max said softly, echoing the words that had become their motto. "She was a rescuer, and now she's a mom, and a teacher, and a friend who changed everything." Stella looked at him with those intelligent eyes that had first captured his heart in that alley behind the store, and Max knew that no matter what adventures lay ahead, they would face them together. The bond between a boy and his dog had become something much larger, a movement of kindness that would ripple outward for generations to come. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments. What's the most courageous thing you've ever done to help someone in need? Your story might inspire someone else to be brave when it matters most.